the American Constitutional Republic. Affairs of state in Oklahoma, the beliefs, principles, opinions, and views of people like you. This is 3D Politics. Featuring creator of Sooner Politics, expert on Oklahoma state government, and current campaigning for state vice chair David Vann. Also, founder and scholar at Constitutional Grounds, political leader, educational speaker, former state of Oklahoma elector David Oldham. And of course, me, your fine host, the Verbal Viking, Tommy McKay, right here. Catch me at verbalviking.com. We have a lot of exciting stuff going on. We've got another political candidate running for Lankford's seat, which is always exciting for me. And his name is David Dambroso. Some of you may be familiar with David Dambroso, but he is also running against James Lankford. Oldham is joining us here. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Hey, before we get started, did you hear about Biden's new presidential seal? Yeah, Biden's got a new presidential seal. Here, let me show it to you. There it is, the old presidential seal joke.
Yeah, but is he going to have to send it back to Delaware because it bites people?
We can only have so much fun. Also, we're going to talk. I sent out a Frontier to the Frontier to request that we speak with Bobby Lorton or Dylan Goforth or anyone at the Frontier about these threats of violence from their organization and from Dylan Goforth specifically. And I have yet to hear from their response, but I'm going to talk 1 second about how I almost said everything I needed to say there. The wage gap. Bynum was talking about the wage gap, and so I'll wax eloquent about that. I hope Oldham has something about the constitutional issues of the day. But without further ado, let's humanize ourselves. What do you guys got going on? What's been going on for real?
It's spring. I am so excited. Winter's over. We went from Arctic conditions to bam, it's springtime, and I love it.
Right. Oldham, what about you?
Oh, just busy. This is the busy time. I know it seems like it's an off year, but we've got city council elections coming, and I'll tell you what, the people that are interested in finding out about candidates and learning about the Constitution is like never before.
Yes.
We are running, I'm running, hither, thither, and yon, just trying to keep up with everything. It's awesome. Thank you guys for you who tune in, because you're, at the base of all of that. And anyway, so if we look a little tired, have bags under the eyes, that's why.
We've got movers and shakers, and I have to say, in my fine raising of children, I have 2 new grandbabies, and so as of Thursday, we had twins fraternal, Phoenix McKay won, and Hazel Kate won, and so we've got 2 beautiful, perfect human beings added to the McKay family.
Great.
So we're excited about that, and don't I hold up well?
Hey, it's great. You're going to have 2 more kids to babysit you some nights,
I'm frozen in my youth, and the world keeps getting old around me. All right, without further ado, we're going to bring David Dambroso in here. Now, David Dambroso's done a political analyst, a lot of door knocking, and worked for Stitt to help bring him into office. And so let's bring David Dambroso in. Look, analyst, a lot of door knocking, and worked for Stitt to bring as you can see, he was a role player for Kevin Costner in The Invisible Man. And so, David, we're pleased to have you on the show tonight. And with full transparency, I got to say, David we know David personally. And it's only a matter of time before.
And he's only recently become a deaf mute. Invisible deaf mute.
I'm sure glad we got all that pre-show production worked out.
I guess we'll have to maybe do.
So I'll just put him in the waiting room again, and then I thought I had this all figured out with him, but something didn't.
Oh man!
Who knows? The baby may have cried.
Oh, that's true. He's got babies too.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
Let's see. Here we go. I said, so what we know though is David Dambroso is also running against, all of this Zoom flub has to do with us trying to set this up. Let me see if I can bring him in again. There he is. Okay. All right. My fault, David. I'm sorry.
Good job, Houdini.
The delay on my phone, I got going faster than I sent it. That was my fault. I apologize for screwing that. And there was no actual sound effect that we planned for you also either. So
well, I'm glad that you recognize that it's your fault, Tom. This is already off the back foot.
Anything that happens around here is my fault. Trust me.
Never my fault, right? I'm just a politician.
This time it's all mine, baby.
Yeah.
So we're pleased to have you here. You are really one of those people that gets out and campaigns hard. You knock 1,000 doors. I know you helped when I'm field director for Kevin Stitt, and you've done a lot of other things. Tell us a little bit about what you've done and why you're in the race.
Sandy Bird. Yeah, I've done a lot of activism. I've done a lot of campaign work, and through that, I've made a lot of connections. But really, it's not about me. It's about promoting the people of the United States and its Constitution. And so I just go wherever I can forward that goal the most.
So you mean you're not a newcomer to the political game. You've run a lot of behind the scenes data, information, and campaign movement on the ground. What got you into this Langford, running against Langford this time?
Oh gosh. So where do we like? He stepped a lot, and he went a bridge too far. After the election, after November election, when he gave briefings to Biden, the top secret briefings before the Associated Press even called the election for Biden, that was I kind of gave him a pass. People think bizarre, not the leadership I think Oklahoma's 77 counties want to see. What I always said was there were about 1,500 issues that were more pressing than that issue to Oklahomans.
So essentially, Langford's not getting it done. What are the main, like, when you get in, you find yourself there. What are your main focus motivations? I mean, what do you want to get? What do you want to do when you get there?
Well, start from zero. I think we've been on the back foot for over 120 years in this country, and just the absolute debasement of constitutional rule and law. And representation from the people. And we know that great progressive Woodrow Wilson kicked us off. He accelerated it. He was one of the people that have kicked us off on this path in the direct election of senators. So it's always good to have another vote for constitutional orthodoxy and originalism in the Senate.
Right, you got a little bit of a freeze. Your audio is sticking with us. Your video is freezing occasionally, so we'll stick with it as best we can. Oldham, Van, what do you got to ask Dambroso as we get going here?
No, are the trains going to run on time if you're the senator? I mean, tell me what's going to change from where it is now.
Well, honestly, one vote. We're in a situation right now where one vote in the Senate could change a lot, but really. That's the right question, Van, because one senator isn't going to change a lot. You really have to go into the coalition. And in my naivete, when I started in politics 12, 13 years ago, I thought, well, we'll just get this one guy elected, and he's a real guy. He's got some really fantastic policies. He'll write some laws. They'll be heard in the legislature, and then they'll become law. Well, not so fast. You've got to have a coalition of legislators to even get the bill heard out of a committee. So really what would change with me is I bring an energy, a charisma, and a team. I bring lots of candidates to the fore, and my race has to be about a contingency of constitutional conservatives getting in office, because by myself, I can't do very much.
Well, let me ask this. In the next election, 2022, then in January 2023, there will be a vote, hopefully for a new majority leader in the Republican Party. Who do you think's the right person for that spot
Oh, you
that year?
ask me that. Well, I mean, presumably we'd have some new representatives. So hard to say. So I'll give you my first political response. I can't say at this point unless I know who's elected and who's been primaried and who's been replaced.
No predictions from Dambroso tonight. Oldham, what do you
don't
got?
Well, I want to say, is there anybody
Hold on.
that's your
Oh, yeah,
ideal?
we're not done.
Yeah, anyone that's your ideal? Only a third of them are going to face re-election, so several will be
Right.
back.
You know what? I'll give you a non-answer that could be presumed to be an answer. I like Rand Paul.
There we go. Okay.
Okay.
So not Mitch McConnell.
Full transparent.
Who?
Not Mitch McConnell, right?
That's good enough.
Okay. All right. I yield back.
Oldham, what do you got for Dambroso?
Well, it's going to be the one that I'm going to start with because Langford missed it when he got it, and I'm sure you will. But tell us what your position on the war on drugs is.
Well, I think there's probably several constitutional approaches you could take here, but mine doesn't have to go any further than the 9th or 10th Amendment. Just to say that this is not the role of proper government. And here's the thing: if you think drug use is abhorrent, like I do personally, you do not want the government to declare war on it, because it seems whatever the government declares war on, it grows, whether that's terrorism, whether that's poverty with LBJ in 1968. We're coming up on the anniversary of that, May 22nd. Poverty grows when government declares a war on it. Terrorism grows when government declares a war on it, and your rights evaporate. And drug use seems to proliferate when government declares a war on that. So, you know, I don't like drugs, but I don't like them enough to pay $22,000 per person per year who gets caught with an unsatisfactory amount of marijuana. So,
Okay.
All right.
And so you kind of already played to your host as an audience. You know my position on the 17th Amendment, and so you know it's hard to find a guy that will try to get elected to remove some of his own power in that position. So your position on the 17th Amendment is what?
And well, term limits are important too. So it becomes more of a club divorced from the interests of the people of the state with the 17th Amendment. I think you'd get more states' interests, more assertion of the 10th Amendment and the will of the people if we had to repeal the 17th Amendment. So I'd push that. I'd also push for term limits. Honestly, I don't want this job, which is why in a way maybe I'm best for it. If there would be a way to step out halfway through the term to say, this is the model, I have replicated what the people of Oklahoma want in a senator, not someone who's going to be there into their twilight years. I'm not talking about anyone specifically, but maybe if someone were there for 40 or 50 or 60 years and maybe they lost touch with the public, despite their physical prowess and ability, perhaps to fly a plane upside down. I don't want that to be the norm, and I don't think the people of the state of Oklahoma or the United States want that to be the norm either.
Van, what do you got?
You know, we had a balanced budget about 20 years ago, and then of course 9/11 happened, and we haven't had a balanced budget since. Do we need to return to a balanced budget? Because all of the dire predictions were much like, you know, the global warming people. We're supposed to be toast by now. It not just thermally, but economically. So how long can we do this?
Yeah, looking at all the QE, I mean, that's the question, right? I mean, you get like 30 Nobel Prizes in economics if you could tell us when.
You're currently listening to David Dambroso campaigning for James Langsford's Senate seat. You once again here on 3D Politics Live on Facebook every Monday, 7 to 8 p.m. with David Van and David Oldham. Standard fixtures here on 3D Politics with your fine verbal Viking host, Tommy McKay. David, sorry to interrupt you there on that soft and flexible reset, but go ahead with what you were saying.
Oh, well, I was saying that the budget, no one knows when we pass that fulcrum point of no return. And this is commonly thought of as the time when the maintenance payments on the interest become greater than something like military expenditures or entitlements, in which case just the economy is done. The government no longer can provide services. Faith and credit in the United States is gone. I say, why take the risk? It is a little bit like the global warming prognostications, isn't it? It's coming, it's coming, it's coming, but it's not quite here because we can continue to digitize fake money to the tune of, tens of times all the liquid M2 cash in the world. Yeah, no, we need a balanced budget, absolutely, and we need cuts, and we need serious cuts. We need cuts in the spirit of bipartisanship to say, I'll take cuts across the board for traditionally pet Republican projects as long as we can get cuts. And I'll go straight to it. It's unpopular. I think we need cuts in the military. Eisenhower warned us about the military industrial complex. And I don't think we need to be spending millions of dollars on cruise missiles to destroy tents, in the desert. So we can still have the strongest military in the history of the world without spending trillions on defense. And I think that's important. I'd like to see our servicemen and women taken better care of. I'd like to see more pay increases, pay schedule increases to beat the rate of inflation. And I'd like to see less money spent on, trillion-dollar programs that go to subsidize NATO and some of the richest European nations in the history of the world. Okay. Some of the richest nations in the history of the world. Americans are subsidizing their use of programs like F-35. So I think that's got to stop.
All right. Dan's boiling over.
Two questions. Two questions. China looks like they could invade Taiwan any day. If they do a total invasion, do we go to war?
Yeah, that would be a fast war. I think you'd have about 189 nation alliance to secure TSMC and those world silicon. So I think that'd be a short one. That'd be pretty easy.
So you do go to war. Your audio cut out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think you have 180 plus nation alliance.
Okay. How about Israel's under attack? Do we go to war to protect Israel?
So this really depends. The Middle East is more of a tinderbox. It just depends on the particulars of the scenario.
Okay.
It's feasible. I wouldn't say. I mean, I wouldn't say yes or no.
Those are tough questions. Congratulations.
For taking them on. I was going to ask, what's your high bowling score and stuff? By the way, what is your high bowling score, actually? I mean, what do you average? Not your highest.
Oh, my gosh. This is a trick.
You can lie. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. I can pretty consistently understand.
My first lie. I don't know.
Hold on. I'm just trying to liven it up here. What do you got, Oldham? Anything else? You're going to press
now I'm all thinking bowling.
Yeah. Well, you can't kick that, you soccer player. Boom.
Never answer the question that was asked, right?
It's been 30 years since I did much bowling.
I mean, that's kind of I don't know how you can even ask that question. I asked Gary Shore what the temperature was going to be on October 22nd. How can we know if we're going to go? I don't know how you can answer that.
There is no easy answer to it, but it can be very telling.
It's got to be conditional too. I mean, Israel's been making some missteps, and this is unpopular, but Israel is one of our best allies in the region, and our geopolitical alliance is very important with Israel, but it really depends on the situation. And I wonder, does Israel really need our help? I mean, they did pretty well in Yom Kippur in 1967, surrounded all sides, outnumbered, facing superior technology. I mean, do they really need us? Do they really need American taxpayer dollars? I mean, all these relationships have to be reevaluated, but I do stand behind Israel.
Yom Kippur was in 73. The 6-Day War was in 67.
Correct.
Yeah, both of them, they started out
on the holy day.
Shape. Yeah.
On the Day of Atonement.
Well,
sure.
The point is, Israel is no weakling. It's certainly outnumbered over there, but your point is taken. I think the NATO money and dollars. Go ahead, Dambroso.
Well, the United States got involved very late in Yom Kippur. So Israel we did get involved. Nixon got involved, but it was very late. The conflict had already been decided. So I don't know that we need to be sending.
That was basically to keep the Soviets out.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it worked. 6 years later, my older brother was training in a former Soviet army base in Egypt. as an American. So it was covert, but so you're not
So,
supposed to know that. But yeah,
Dambroso, what you're, we have talked, interviewed, and worked with Willie J. Montague out in Florida, and one of my reasons for supporting him, even though he's in Florida, every seat matters, I believe. He was up against Val Demings, and anything to run against her is what I figured.
Yeah,
Every
she's a new
seat
manager.
matters, and so as we get into it, what about energy independence, the Keystone Pipeline, and all that business on oil independence? Where's your positions on that?
Yeah, and I think it's pretty easy to follow
That's
where I'm
the easy
going
way.
here.
Well, wax
We
eloquent.
absolutely require it. I mean, I certainly wouldn't shut down.
T-ball.
Yeah, energy
Not
independence.
against
is good,
oil,
Tom.
are you?
Thanks for
Yeah.
asking.
That bowling score, by golly, that's
Thumbs-
amazing.
2 thumbs way up on energy independence.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
because
doesn't make any sense to put more carbon in the atmosphere by using rail lines to bring in petroleum product from Canada
Yeah.
versus
Yeah.
the pipeline.
Yeah.
It really, it's political cronyism. I believe Warren Buffett stands to make tens of millions
Yep.
of dollars from this arrangement.
Exactly.
And it's cost tens of thousands of American jobs and countless livelihoods. So no, we have to have energy independence. Under Trump, we achieved some milestones in that regard. I'd like to return to that.
Nice. So the two main, what's for our audience members, Dambroso, if he gets in there, what's the two main, when they walk away from this interview, what's the two main things they're going to know you stand for or trying to do?
Yeah.
Well, the United States Constitution and the will of the people. I think we've had very poor representation in terms of constitutional rule, even here in the state of Oklahoma. And, I like to adapt a Reagan quote that I'm just going to butcher here. I'm going to paraphrase it really. He said something essentially that if freedom can't thrive in the United States, where can you have it? We're really the last bastion of freedom in the world. And so I say, with 77 Republican counties all voting for the Republican presidential candidate going back to the year 2000, making us the reddest state in the history of the union, if we can't have constitutionalism here in Oklahoma, where can we have it in the United States? We have the golden opportunity to be a standard bearer in the country. And we simply are not with our current representation. And the political structures are changing. I'll tell you this, Langford and others like him, the establishment, they were untouchable in decades past. That is not so. Day one in the campaign, I would start with tens of thousands of dollars in the campaign proper and millions of dollars of PAC money behind me because of how the landscape has changed. And this has an effect to discourage Langford donors and to discourage Langford grassroots action. But here's the key. The will of the people, we simply won't have it anymore. We don't like these career politicians. I think the takeaway is I would like to go back to productive work. I would like to go back to being a citizen as it was in the founding. Even a 6-year term, it would be phenomenal if people could step down halfway through the term and say, here's someone I trained up. I'm confident in them. They'll do a term and a half, 9, 10 years. This will be fine. And we leave. I think we absolutely have to have term limits. So I would say the two takeaways are I'd like to return a constitutional order to the office and the will of the people. I don't see the will of the people being enacted by our current Senate representation.
Van.
Yeah. I'm going to pull a line from Golda Meir in 1967 when she came to America and raised funds for their defense. She said to the Americans, she said, we've decided we'll fight. It's up to you to decide if we'll win. She's saying that to people she's trying to beg money from.
Right.
So I'm going to say, Dambroso, you've decided to enter this race. You're going to fight. What will it take financially for you to be in position to win?
It's a good question. So I've been a real force multiplier on races I've worked on, races I've managed, races I've ran. We routinely, I routinely, my teams spend 1/10 of what our opponents do and have victories. So I would say that number is between 1/5 and 1/10 of whatever it is Langford spending. I think that puts us in a safe victory margin. So probably a couple $1 million, really. It won't be cheap. And that would be a fairly inexpensive United States Senate race. And so, yeah, it really is predicated on funds, because the energy is there. I mean, when you say Langford, I mean, there are armies of people heaven reserve waiting to knock. So I will say this, I give credit where it's due. I believe, to my knowledge, I am number 2 in the history of the state of Oklahoma in mobilizing bodies to go and do grassroots action, such as knocking on doors. Right. I've gotten about 55, 60 people knocking day in, day out for several months. Do you know who number 1 is?
No.
James Langford. And he beat me by about a factor of 10.
Yeah.
So that is a big gulf. And so really the question is, how much has enthusiasm for him eroded? So that will be a big determining factor. And I want to talk about something extremely important.
Okay.
We can't have candidates of the same ilk competing against each other. Yep. I got into this race because, well, I'm my 9th choice. I went to about 8 others and begged them to run and said that we'll get them funds. But if there were anyone else that wanted to join this race that I believed in their constitutional orthodoxy, I believed in their candidacy, I have no problem having the discussion. One of us needs to drop out. And I would not be that holdout to split the vote to prevent the people from taking this seat back. I absolutely do not believe in the cult of personality that politics seems to gin up, and this self-aggrandizing spirit of it all. It cannot be about any one of us individually. Really, it is about serving the people and the interest of the people. And I don't believe it's in the interest of the people if we have 2 constitutionalists in this race. So I'm still looking for the other constitutionalist.
Okay. So, I mean, listen, the 2 people that I've interviewed so far to replace Langford, you and Lawmeyer, both of you guys, as far as I'm concerned, are either one of you are fine with me to win against Langford. So, presuming, from my opinion, that you guys you and Lawmeyer are on the same page politically, working for the same thing, how would you differentiate yourself from Lawmeyer while staying on the same team?
Yeah, so I don't really know anything about him other than that, he's a pastor like Senator Langford. So, I wonder if the people want to change his pace there. One of the greatest Christians of our time is Jimmy Carter. And what an impotent leader he was. I don't think he's missed Sunday school in 50 years once.
Well, you just got yourself a whole bunch of pastoral endorsements right there. Good for you.
No. Well, but I mean, again, what is it that...
and you look at a guy... Sorry?
You're freezing up on us, Dambroso. We missed that.
After that, maybe I'm being smitten.
Well, what I'm saying, if from rather than a personal, standpoint, what about politics? So you're not really familiar with his politics, and of course he hasn't.
I watched a little. Right? I watched a bit of the interview. I think there's plenty of time to improve. I'm not trying to run a negative race here. Yeah. I didn't see anything I really disliked about him. I mean, look. Right here, Lawmeyer would be a tremendous upgrade from what I've seen to Senator Langford. Is he what the state of Oklahoma needs and what the country needs? I don't know that. I was not 100% pleased with some of his answers on the Constitution. So I need a real constitutionalist. I think the people do, really the country does. And so I think there's room to grow for everyone. So as long as he's willing to listen and grow, I think there's hope there. But right now, I think I bring more of a basis of constitutional understanding and experience in politics and coalition. For instance, I'm bringing candidate Montague here to campaign to fundraise for plenty of candidates. I'm bringing Kimberly Klasick to Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm bringing Alex Stovall.
Okay.
We're closing in on the last minute here. Dambroso, you want to stick around or you want to head out after this?
I've got 10 more minutes. Anything you want.
Well, we'll push through the break here, and we'll come back with some questions from David Oldham, because I believe he has just been totally iced out of this conversation.
Sorry. So sorry.
So
Oldham was just happy when I answered that question. The Constitution's like, well, I rest my case.
All right, so hang tight here while we reset for a station identification. Boys, take yourself out. I'm going to take you out, Dambroso. I'll bring you right back in. Here we go. Stay tuned for station identification. The American Constitutional Republic, affairs of state in Oklahoma, the beliefs, principles, opinions, and views of people like you. This is 3D Politics. Yeah, featuring me, your fine verbal Viking and host, Tommy McKay. Catch me at verbalviking.com. And of course, every week, creator, Sooner Politics, expert on Oklahoma State government, and currently running for state vice chair, David Van. And coming in with some strong questions for Dambroso in a minute, we got David Oldham, founder and scholar at Constitutional Grounds. David Oldham, and we're going to bring Dambroso right back in, and here he comes. Dambroso's coming back in, and then here he comes. Let's hope he's there. He's there. Yeah.
I read some of the comments. I already got great comments.
All right. Well, I haven't had a chance to check him, but I know what happened to Oldham.
Oh, hit the wrong button, guys. Sorry.
Wow. That wasn't me, Oldham. This time's not my fault.
Oops.
Yeah. Okay, so Dambroso is back. And Oldham was just so polite last time, and then Dambroso's got comments on comments. So first, Oldham, what's your question for the candidate?
Well, as I've been talking to people, and I've been out and about, and even across the country now since the election, the question I have is, what do you think should be going on at the federal level and in the Senate about the election? If anything, what should the federal government be doing?
Well, you had that great 12th Amendment opportunity that Senator Langford fumbled on January 6th. And Vice President Pence, I think they had a fundamental misunderstanding of just the plain text of the Constitution, which, if we had a constitutionalist in office already, this is why it's so key. You would not have had that problem in the Senate if you had more constitutionalists there that understood the 12th Amendment. No, the vice president just doesn't unilaterally decide who wins the presidential contest. He sends it back to the states for clarification so the states can have their constitutional rule and allow the legislator to actually determine the terms of the race, not secretaries of state or governors. So we didn't have that constitutional leadership, and that was the problem with Langford. So, he ran, I guess, this Baptist youth camp, which was gigantic. I believe it's called Falls Creek, and he was beloved. And I don't have a problem with James Langford as an individual, but that's really for God to decide. No one knows what kind of individual James Langford truly is, or anyone is, but God himself. So I stay out of that. I can only deal with outcomes and actions. He had very poor outcomes and actions. And so I think in my comment earlier about Lehmeyer, I don't know much about him other than the 10 minutes I caught half of the interview with him on your program. I was not 100% pleased with his constitutional answers. He shows potential. I think he's already better than Langford, but I think we find him in the same place that we were with Langford 6 or 8 years ago in 14 and 16. And so we just didn't know. He was a nice guy. He was a married Christian businessman. This kind of thing, we don't really know by their past action what they're going to do in the future in regards to the Constitution. What kind of candidates have they supported? Why did they support those candidates? Have they been on the record where they are about the Constitution and the role of government? So you're rolling the dice. So someone referenced President Trump. You're right. We didn't know with President Trump. We just had to believe based on his charisma and saying, what he even said to Flint, Michigan, right? In certain urban areas, what do you have to lose at this point? The establishment of both parties had betrayed the people for so long. We just wanted to take a chance on an outsider. And so this is what I want to say. Donald Trump is a guy who said he had never asked God for forgiveness. Yeah. So the man couldn't have been a Christian at the time he was running for office. He said he crossed the bridge together. Now, I believe that has since changed. That's my opinion. But what a great leader. Have we had a better president in 70 years? And so my Christian faith is very meaningful. Actually, I went to Bible school, but as far as politics are concerned, I don't lead with that. I don't think that it's inappropriate. I think pastors need to take more of a role. And I would like to see more pastors reject government rule and reject 501(c)(3) status, because it puts the state at the head of the church rather than Jesus Christ. And so Trump did something really phenomenal with 501(c)(3). He unshackled many of the churches, where he stopped First Amendment restrictions that they had and fear of reprisal from the IRS like we had under Obama. And many of these pastors did not move beyond the invisible fence. So I will compliment the little bit I heard about Lehmeyer is that he seems to be tackling some pretty prickly, non-popular topics from the pulpit. So sounds like he might be a courageous man, and we definitely need courageous men.
Now, Van, I know you're just like pasta boiling over there, but
Dambroso's already got the art of filibuster down really good. He just went all over.
I tried to go to several rabbit holes and then tie them together.
But he hasn't read Dr. Seuss, or is that just not allowed in the Senate anymore?
I got a question. I believe I understand what Dambroso said about his interpretation of the 12th Amendment and the questioning of electors. I have said publicly that pedophilia and gay sex is more outrageous than questioning electors. Just thought I'd throw that in there. So my question, though, is Oldham. Poor Oldham. He's just been so polite. Do you agree with Dambroso's interpretation of challenging the electors on that issue?
Well, we're going to get into that with the my constitutional minute here.
Before you get into the meat, do you agree? Do you think Dambroso's sending it up properly?
Yeah, where did I miss it, Oldham?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about in the 12th Amendment, but the 14th for sure is where Langford and Inhofe both missed the boat.
I might have misquoted
on that. No, the 12th Amendment deals with
contested electors.
Has to do with the seating of the electors, but I think Pence has been wrongly held to account because he doesn't actually have any power personally, but the legislature itself does. The Congress does. Both houses, they collectively acted improperly.
Okay, Van.
Well, President, I actually disagree with you, Old, and this might get exciting. So Pence, I think, strawmanned the position that American patriots wanted him to take. So he made a statement, something to the effect of that he could not unilaterally decide the outcome of the election. We were not saying that. That was not the argument.
I agree with that.
I agree with that. Clarification for him to send back the contested electors to the state legislators. Say, this is our set of electors that we have officially decided and clarified on.
All right, Van, what do you got?
We created some of this problem when we moved inauguration up from March to, up to January, because we put this time crunch. So that's one part of it. The other thing is that Pence did have a certain power, and is when you're presiding, you choose what reality is. Now, had he just said, since there's conflict in these states, we've received more than one report from the state, we are going to set those aside. That has a precedence. I believe it was in the 1870s, 3 states, their electors were set aside. I disagree with what Inhofe said when he said, I'm duty bound to vote yes. Well, there's never an election called where you're duty bound to vote yes. You don't have an election unless you have a choice. So, I just wanted to set those things aside on that. I think that the real reform has to happen in the states. I've talked to several of our legislators in the state about changing our constitution to protect that supreme authority of the state legislature by saying after the presidential election, the following Monday, we automatically have a special session of our state legislature to certify, because otherwise the governor, by denying the right to a special session, is denying the legislature authority. That's my thoughts on it. Dambroso,
I agree. And so that's, I believe that was the election of 1876. And you tell me this, Oldham and Van, I'll kick it off to you. I think Congress took a cop out. They said, well, there's a statute. There's a congressional act of, I believe about a decade later, it was 1886, 1887, somewhere around there, that sort of established more of a streamlined process than the 12th Amendment, really an inferior process that was very ambiguous, didn't settle anything. And so this Congress, January, went with this act. So you tell me, Oldham man, does a statute ever supersede the United States Constitution? I think when the two are at odds, you go with the Constitution and the amendment. Am I wrong?
Yeah. That's true if they're in conflict.
Correct. I don't see where they were in
having
conflict.
representatives that
What I see is that the Congress actually didn't do their responsibility. We need to hold everybody who voted yes accountable because they did not uphold the 14th Amendment. That's what we're going to talk about here in a little bit. Yeah. Because the 14th Amendment, Section 2 says that they're not allowed to have their representation to the degree of the people whose votes were abridged. And when you hold an illegal election, that's 100%. So they don't get any representation in Congress for those seats elected in that election. They don't get any seats in the Senate. Georgia had a second election run just as badly, and they don't get their two senators sat, and they don't get any of their state election elected sat. And on and on and on it goes. That's the idea that should be going on, but that's not what's being upheld. We need to hold those people who didn't uphold the Constitution accountable for it.
Yeah.
So, and that is in the act you're talking about. They were supposed to vote. They were supposed to vote according to the Constitution, and they didn't. So,
that's why it's so important to have candidates that understand the Constitution. And to really, we have to change the whole primary process to where it focuses more on that. Right now, I think it's very weak.
Yep.
So we've got some of our fantastic viewers that are encouraging a Lohmeyer-Dambroso partnership. I think this is kind of my attitude too, from the county races to the state races and the federal races. That we have to get the GOP working together, and regardless of the differences between Dambroso and Lohmeyer, the problem here is Langford. And so we've got to work as well as we can together to iron out our differences and find a spearhead for this movement.
Yeah, we've got to be allied. You're absolutely right. I mean, I hate to see this. We typically lose. The people generally lose. You have a highly contested seat, and you have somewhat interchangeable candidates siphoning votes from each other and strengthening the opponent. Now, I will say this. I believe we should have at least 3 people in the Republican primary to raise the probability of a runoff, because Langford is weakest in the runoff. So if it's just Langford and one other candidate, which I'm sure we won't have a problem. I'm sure there are going to be 3 to 4 more candidates filing. But I do not want to be a party of taking votes away from the constitutionalist conservative contingent of the party. I don't want there to be a split. Maybe the Chamberites can split their votes. Maybe some of the neocon enter those types of votes. I don't care. Neocons, Chambercrats, whatever. Christ, they can all split the vote. I don't care. It's not interchangeable. But to have two strong constitutions, and that's what I'm trying to determine here. And all I care about in this race is to have a representation of the people and the United States Constitution in this race. And there must be at least one candidate to stand for that in this
You're
race.
listening to the voice of David Dambroso running for Oklahoma State Senate against James Langford. Here we are once again. Here we are again. 3D Politics every Monday night with me, your fine host, Tommy McKay, and David Van from SoonerPolitics.org, and, of course, David Old from ConstitutionalGrounds.com. We want to pepper you with a couple more questions. Hey, before we get too far down the road, David Dambroso, where do people find out about you, contact you, support you, question you, and find out more about you?
Well, in this United States Senate race, I have set up a page, David Dambroso for United States Senate. Also,
Hold
I
on,
set up
you talk too fast. You talk too fast. David
set up a
Dambroso.
comedic page. Well, this is the important one, all right?
Okay,
I
hey,
set
tell
up
us the
the
one for
office-
people who love you and want to give you money. Where do they go?
The office of the United States Senator, right? So I set this up. It's not a real office, just like the office of the president-elect. But I thought since Trump's okay with everything Biden does and de facto is now responsible, in my view, for
Where do
everything
we
Biden does,
go?
I set up my
Okay.
own office of the United States Senator-elect. So you can go there to my
Share that.
office. of
Hey, can you share
Senator-elect.
that for us? I've adjusted the share screen. I don't know if you have the
Go
ability.
ahead and, well, I don't want to type anything in, but just go ahead.
Eh,
and
don't
search
worry
for
about it. We'll find that.
I
But
believe
you
I'm
are
the
at
I'm the only office of the United States Senator-elect on Facebook.
Office of
Because it's
Senator
not
Elect.
real.
All right.
But Langford
Everybody-
apparently believes in such things with his support for Biden. So,
Everybody's a comedian. aren't they?
no, I'm serious. I have a page like that.
I know you do. That's funny.
He's a very serious comedian.
No, it's glad. I think that one of the greatest things that's going on, and I think you kind of started this way in the beginning of our interview, the electorate is more informed and involved than ever before, I think, especially in my lifetime for sure. Everybody was tuning out and dropping out and tuning out. And so people are involved and talking about it. Van, what else have you got before
Well,
we?
I wanted for those people who maybe don't know the history of the show, you know, familiarity breeds contempt here, and it's true. We're kind of badgering Oldham because he's a brother here. He's part of the original cast of 3D Politics. So I just want to explain why we're giving him a little harder time.
No reason to negative campaign against Dambroso by slinging that.
Well, so, look, that's why conservatives are so sharp. We have a little bit of a contentious exchange, but there's not contempt there, right?
Yeah.
We're fighting ideals, not egos.
I like that. I like that. Oldham, before we get Dambroso out of here, what else you got? You want anything else for him?
No, I mean, I love it that you're in and that it's serious. It's not a joke. You're really running. Do you have people behind you, or do you have a staff and things like that going at this point?
I've been humbled of the support, and I don't want to name. I've had some IT gurus, really, and even in fundraising, come to me out of the woodwork. I've got a network of surgeons, strangely enough, they're into just conservative politics, and they want to get behind me. And I bring in the PAC that oppose Maxine Waters and some other PACs I don't want to name. And of course, there's no direct coordination. So unfortunately, what that means is I don't know how much they're going to spend. I don't know when they're going to spend, and I really don't know if they're going to spend. There's no guarantee. Hey, we have a desire to watch this race and to see Langford replaced.
All right. Well, hopefully it'll all come pouring in one way or the other, the Republicans will move in the right direction. Van, anything else before we send
this
him away?
is good. Yeah,
David,
let's get out before we blow it for him.
yeah, I wasn't going to tie him down with anything. David Dambroso, always a pleasure to have your energy and excitement. We appreciate your campaigning, all the stuff you've done behind the scenes before you got here, and now you're willing to step up and take this to the next step. Everybody is encouraging you to reach out to Lawmeyer and see if you guys can't formulate some sort of coalition so that you guys are moving in the same direction.
Dialogue's great, and I encourage that. I encourage debate. So,
Well, very good. Okay, we are going to beam you out. Are you ready?
See you later.
Let's see if it works.
Thanks for coming.
There he goes. Dambroso, thanks for showing up. We appreciate you being on the show. We want to have you back again when you can. We'll see you next time. Thanks, Dave. There goes David Dambroso. Wow, fantastic. That was I even got my sound effect in there. That was just too much. I'm having fun. I don't care. So thank you, Dambroso, for showing up. We've got to buy him a new computer with all that money.
Or some better Wi-Fi.
Yeah, some Wi-Fi or something.
Yeah.
But anyway, I appreciate the fact that we've got so many people coming out to move Langford into the right direction. So you want to reflect on that? What do you? Anything you want to comment on? Yeah,
I want to say at the Tulsa County Republican Convention back in 2013, as it was winding down, we were talking about the platform. I'm sitting in the back row next to Jim Bridenstine. And he had just gotten threats because he refused to vote for John Boehner for Speaker. It was his very first vote. And he said to me, he says, Dave, you think I'm going to get primaried? And I said, oh, yeah. And then he said, did you have to say it that
you could have waited just a second. Yeah.
And I said, Jim, here's the thing. You made defeating an incumbent look easy. And now there's plenty of people who think they can do it too. And I said, you know all the minefields that you had to navigate through without them blowing you up. And I'm going to say this about Lohmeyer and Dambroso. If they're taking on an incumbent, there's a minefield you're going through.
Oh, yeah.
And Bridenstine made it look easy. It's not. So.
No, it's not easy.
Yeah. Bridenstine came up from underneath the ground. So, I mean, he just kind of, I saw a bumper sticker as the way it started.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to say, and I talked to Clay Clark last Thursday night. I said, that campaign does remind me a little bit of Bridenstine in that I know the handlers that helped Jim early on. They're marketing specialists. And that's a big part of this thing.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I know Lohmeyer has some of those people too. And I know Dambroso has great skills. He's natural skills. First time I heard him on the radio with Pat Campbell, I was like all over. I said, man, I got to get this guy involved in citizen journalism. He's a natural. So,
Lohmeyer's got the polished, pulpit presentation. He's got the visual look. He's got it all down. Dambroso's a little more relaxed in his whole delivery. And but Dambroso has skills on the knocking doors and campaigning that you just can't find.
This is Oklahoma, and he campaigns with an AK-47 over his shoulder.
You can't argue with that.
I think it's an AR. I don't think.
Oh, I'm sorry, an AR-15. You're right.
That's the wrong.
That's right.
Message.
It's getting
a
late.
Sorry.
You can make your own aspirin, David.
Yeah, I know.
That I learned. So we all learned something. But I'm glad they're running. We've got to get the GOP people working together. Speaking of which, real quickly, I'm going to go ahead and throw this plug in here. I've landed an interview with Rhonda Wilmot Smith for Monday, the 29th. Not next week, but a week after next. Yep. And so same thing with her and Darren Gantz, working against each other when she's the rally cry with the ability to pull many people together. Gantz, the ability to pull fundraising together and working against each other to some degree. We've got to. I mean, I'm. There's my improv on what I learned. The differences, the main two differences between Rhonda Wilmot Smith and Darren Gantz was Darren Gantz is viewed as a successful fundraiser, and Wilmot Smith is viewed as a successful activist, gathering many people together.
Grassroots organizer.
Yeah,
so again, but that was 2 weeks ago. Together. I think that's behind us.
Again, I'm not commenting on that specifically. I'm saying these general categorical puzzle pieces seem to fit together to me. Sure. Dambroso and Lohmeyer seem like they could work together because they have complementary skills. Same thing with Rhonda Wilmot Smith and Darren Gantz. We've got to get and
Tom, I'm going to say Dambroso's done that before. He was in a Senate race in West Tulsa metro area, and he got with Cody Rogers, saw that Cody had plenty of resources to do it. And once Cody passed muster, he said, all right, I'll get behind you. So Cody turned around and hired him. And Dambroso pulled off a big victory for Cody. Now he's in the Senate. So
Right. So anyway, I think there's a lot of stuff there. We're going to talk a little bit about the wage gap later. Bynum talked about that. We've got a constitutional minute coming up from Oldham, and I want to also mention my offer to Bobby Lorton and Dylan Goforth to come explain their position about violence from media outlets and social media's lack of flagging that.
And I'm going to say this openly and publicly. If you can't get anywhere with those two, let me reach out to Cliff Adcock, one of the top reporters there. Cliff and I built a real good relationship. We've gone back years. So
that's fine.
I think I can get Cliff.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that, especially my persona and where I come from. They're not. They could very well underestimate my seriousness on this deal. I know that the racial slur against the Norman girls in the basketball thing,
Right.
and my comment was that threats of murder from Dylan Goforth are worse than any racial slur. I'm just sorry. It's objectionably understandable that a threat of murder, you cannot exceed that with any more hate. And so that was my comment. I got called a racist 75 times from people attempting to defend Dylan Goforth's death threats. Okay, so we're really going to have to fix the local media around here. We cannot have local media threatening and then saying it's unfair for people to say hate crime. Threatening death is hate crime, and I'm already still fired up about it. So here's the problem. I sent an email to Bobby Lorton, the publisher of the Frontier, and Dylan Goforth. And this whole Matt Rowan thing all came up, and they're saying, you're just trying to distract, you racist. I've been on Dylan Goforth with this since it's August 14th, 2020. 7 months I've been going on about this, well before any racial slur on Norman basketball players, okay? This has been a problem with Dylan Goforth for some time. And so this is a serious issue of professional media personalities threatening violence, pretending it's a joke, when it wasn't a joke, because he literally said, I'm not joking. This is a real problem. Also, a call to action gets us into mass communication law. He put a price on his murder. He said, let me watch a movie and I'll murder anyone. That is a combination for a call to action to murder. If he was joking, then he needs to clarify that with a public apology to me, to the community, from the Frontier and from Dylan Goforth, to let us all know that in the future, he'll never pretend to joke like that again. Okay, that is not how we joke. That's not a joke. It was a threat of murder. All right, so if you can get somebody from the Frontier, you bring them on. We'll schedule them.
Tom, what I'm saying, Dylan is the guy who really should talk to us. He really should answer for.
He's had 7 months to respond to me professionally or politely. He's not responded at all. I think he underestimates the seriousness of the issue here, and perhaps he thinks I'm kidding around or something. Maybe he thinks, as a comedian and a political humorist professional, that he thinks I'm just joking. Okay. The problem is I'm a professional comedian. Okay, and I don't pretend to be a professional media outlet. I'm a professional comedian, and he's a professional media person pretending to be a comedian. He stepped in it. He doesn't know how to be a comedian. Okay?
Yeah, and he said those things to me about, the punching Nazis stuff. I've heard it too. So, but yeah.
I don't know anything about that. All I know is threat and murder, and I took exception to it on August 14th, 2020, which was well before any other round ball issues with Norman girls. Mm-hmm. So just know that the Frontier and Dylan Goforth, Bobby Lorton, have both, so far, I have gotten zero response to my call for them to address this issue of Dylan Goforth's threats of violence, okay?
Yeah.
They will not respond so far. I did say we go every Monday. They only had today as a chance to respond, so if you can get them to respond, we'll bring them on and talk about this issue, okay? But it's because it's not going to go away is the problem. Let's talk about Constitutional Minute with David Oldham before I rage on the wage gap.
All right. Well, we kind of got into it, but let's talk about, and it's especially important for it's for both of the senators, but especially James Inhofe and his reaction, where he thought that he had no choice but to accept the votes that were cast by the various states, the electoral slates. And here's the problem, is that the 14th Amendment says that the representatives shall be apportioned among the several states according to their respective numbers. Now, just as a quick note, that is the basis for representation. So you take a census, the number of the people within your state determines the number of representatives. Well, it goes on and says that if the right to vote is denied or abridged in any way to the legal voters, basically to the legal voters, then the basis of representation must be reduced by the number abridged. Okay, so that basis of representation means that it must be reduced. Well, what that means is if you have an election, as we have often pointed out, before the election even happened, that Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, and so forth were acting illegally, that their election was illegal, that means actually 100% of the electorate was denied a lawful election. In other words, their vote was abridged. Not one of their representatives may be sat. Their electoral delegation may not be sat. The question is, where does this removal of the electoral slate happen? That you go back to the 14th Amendment and statutes made in pursuance thereof, and you find out that happens actually at Congress. When the slate comes in, there's a vote taken. If there's an objection raised, often is, David, you've mentioned 1876. Three states, I think it was 3 or 4 states were removed. They were not seated. Ulysses S. Grant was elected anyway.
Right.
And then there have been numerous other times that it has happened. Actually, when you look at the numbers, the Democrats call for objections more often than the Republicans. But then what happens is the houses split, and they debate individually each motion for objection to the electoral slate.
Yeah, Oldham, hold on just a second. You're listening to David Old from constitutionalgrounds.com, and Van, you're going to make a clarifying question here.
Well, yes. Is there any adjudication through the judiciary branch on this matter? Does it clearly have to happen congressionally?
Well, the 14th Amendment doesn't say who should decide. It just
controlling legal authority, as Al Gore would say.
With that?
Al Gore would say there's no controlling legal authority.
Yeah, it means everybody actually has to, every government official has to take part to whatever degree they have.
It's not well defined is the problem.
It's not well defined, but that means the judiciary can get involved. That means that the Congress, both the House and Senate, must be involved. That happens at the time of the counting. Now the states also have to be involved. And there are remedies that could come through the states. Those are myriad and who knows,
David, let's play this out. Let's say Congress acts and strips a state out. That state's not going to likely just, take it sitting down. They're going to file a lawsuit to the Supreme Court against another state who was awarded something else that they weren't.
Well, the thing is that Congress is the sole decider of who sits in Congress. So in other words, we vote people in, but there is actually a vote taken by Congress to seat all the people that were elected. The people from the various states that hold illegal elections must not be allowed to be seated. That's what the 14th
I got that.
Amendment is saying.
Okay. But you understand, from that state's point of view, they're going to say, we're being denied now our rights as states, and either we're going to get ours back or we're taking a hike. Hello, secession. That's what I could see coming out of it.
All they have to, it's really clear. All they have to do is hold a lawful election where everybody's right to vote is not
again, David, I get you're saying that, but their argument's going to be, we did.
So my question comes in with
Congress or the courts would be disagreeing with that, and they'd be saying, fix it.
So when there's an argument between the states, who's supposed to deal with it? That's the Supreme Court, and they just didn't see the case.
Well, that's when there's an argument between states.
Yes.
That's what this was.
Well, to a degree, yes.
Yeah, I mean, there is a slight distinction.
There is a slight distinction, and there's also a distinction without a difference. Yeah. The Supreme Court just bowed out and said we're not gonna visit the issue,
which is blood on their hands as far as I'm concerned for January 6th. I mean, they should have dealt with that.
There is that. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't understand all the reasons why they're doing that.
Right. Okay.
But the thing is that ultimately Congress did have a direct call to action, and they failed it. And so when Inhofe and Langford did their things, and especially Inhofe, he ignored the 14th. You guys know I've been screaming about the 14th since I was an elector, because that's when I was made aware of it. And I was screaming about it before the election because this was going to be the problem. This is the solution, like it or not. States may not like that this is the solution, but this is the solution that came after the Civil War. Like it or not, this is supposed to be the solution. We can be a lawless society and just pick up our ball and go home and secede whenever we don't like something, when our state does something illegally, or we take that as a personal conviction to right our wrongs and get back in the game. And it's really,
Van's chomping at the bit. What do you got, Van?
So let me put this out there, Oldham. At the same time this is happening, and you're making a strong case that certain states should lose representation in Congress. Now we're in the middle of a report on our census, and everybody's saying there's probably 5 congressional seats that are going to move from leftist strongholds to conservative strongholds.
Right.
And that's going to be enough probably to take away Nancy Pelosi's majority, just all other things being equal.
Sure.
And is there going to be a challenge to that? Because there had been. I think it was 20 years ago, New York fought to try to hang on to some of their representation.
Well, this gets into a different issue, and and again, the census and the districting of lines goes to the various states.
The premise which brings it about is different, but the process of removing representation from one state and then at the same time giving it to other states is pretty much the same thing.
Well, when you're talking House membership, that's done by the numbers. So
exactly,
because these leftist states, now they don't want to admit it, but they've had so many people moving to states like Oklahoma, Texas, Florida, and so forth.
But nonetheless,
representation. Now they're going to fight it.
But in 1990 is actually when New York fought it, and it went on for years.
Right.
They were fighting. Now, Congress did what they did anyway, but I'm saying there's precedent. States that lose their numbers via the census report don't give that up without a fight sometimes.
Well, of course. I mean, that's fine.
I'm just saying we got both things going on at the same time is what I'm saying.
There's what the Constitution says, and then there's what everybody wants to do despite the Constitution, a la New York. And that's a problem. You know, New Yorkers need to get a hold of their government and bring them back into line. Because you know what? All they have to do is play by the rules. In other words, obey the law, and nothing happens. There's no problems.
And and de Blasio and Cuomo, of course they're gonna go. They're such honorable men, don't you know?
Yeah. Ask all the women.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a good report, Oldham. That's a nugget to chew on tonight.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, what else, gentlemen? Anything else? That's our Constitutional Minute by David Oldham right there. All about the Constitution with David Oldham, constitutionalgrounds.com. Van, what else?
I've
What else for
got a
tonight?
little bit of grave news. This is going to be a quick one on the COVID update.
Okay.
And we are continuing to bring this down. On average, about 200, maybe 300 people a day in Oklahoma are
Okay.
We're
testing
going to
positive
lose
for
the
COVID.
COVID update pretty quick.
Well, yeah, but this is important.
Okay.
Right now, according to the state's numbers, there's about 19,000 people still certified as still have COVID.
Okay.
Now, the thing is, about 15,000 of those 19,000 have had it for over a month. And that's not a good situation. And I know I actually know families who are dealing with that, and you guys do too. But
So they're having it.
privacy.
They're having it, and they're not able to kick it. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, these are people hanging on for months.
And what's
Hanging
are they all in an age group, or are they scattered through
The ones I know of, yes, definitely. And again, 80% of the deaths have been people over 65. So yeah, that's the scenario we're talking about. As far as people that, have just caught it in the last, 2 weeks, there's about 4,000 or 5,000 right now at any one time. Now keep in mind, 2 months ago, it was 40,000 currently have COVID. Now it's 4,000. Yeah, that's of a fresh new case, not counting these 15,000.
So what are you guys' opinion on Stitt opened up the state, right? I think that's I don't know if it's executive order all of a sudden or if it comes into effect, but
he declared victory and got out of Vietnam because our friend Frank Urbanic kind of boxed his ears in.
Okay, so here's my question, more to my other problem. So the governor, who has higher authority, I think, in some ways than the mayor, even though they're in different realms. I mean, the mayor runs a city. Okay. So here's my question, because I'm not trying to argue that.
Okay.
I'm really worried about the teachers, because if Governor Stitt, the authority of the state, says, okay, COVID restrictions are gone, but the mayor, G.T. Bynum, says, not so fast, was the report on the news. G.T. Bynum says, not so fast, to the governor. And so if the governor who makes a rule is not obeyed by the mayor of Tulsa, why should I obey the mayor? And why should the children obey the teachers in the class? G.T. Bynum should be ashamed of himself for disrespecting the authority of the state.
Okay, I'm going to throw this back at you.
You're not the first person who's pushed back on this.
What do you do when Stitt says no to Biden and says, no, our state's going to decide our own policy?
Well, that could be a problem.
I mean, you're saying, it works both ways.
So my issue is with Bynum, who continues to want to operate outside of his lane by explaining to parents how to parent their children, when he won't even follow the authority of the governor.
Well, let's first off, it's a mush of a bunch of garbage, because Stitt never had the right to or authority to close everything down, to issue mask mandates, or any of that stuff. That's never happened. He's never also had the authority to allow cities to do that. Bynum is a mayor of a city, and a city is an entity of the state. So he is effectively under the
I'm loving it. I'm loving it, Oldham.
Okay.
All right, Van. Okay, hold on. Soft reset. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, Tommy McKay, your verbal Viking, on 3D Politics Live every Monday at 7 p.m.-ish, as you find out. And I've got David Oldham, Constitutional Grounds, speaking eloquently about the Constitution, and David Van on all things state. What was your point, Van?
Well, actually, you kind of cut off Oldham. Did you have more to say on that, Oldham? You were in the middle of it.
The real thing is that no government has the authority to be dictating mask use or
I got
Man,
that.
You took exception with him saying that G.T. Bynum was a member of the state.
No, what I'm saying is, for someone to say, how dare the mayor do other than what he's told by the governor? Well, how dare our governor do other than what President Biden tells him to do?
I see
You see
your
what I'm
point.
saying?
It's
It
total
works
lawlessness.
No.
Which, yes, go ahead.
No.
Not necessarily.
No, wait, I know there's
We'll cover that.
nuances
We'll
here,
cover
but
that.
I
All right,
just
go ahead,
want
go
you
ahead, go
to
ahead.
understand the play. But about 6 years ago, I was talking to State Representative at the time, Jason Murphy, a guy I respect, and I know he's greatly respected. He had a problem because his county, Logan County, had all kinds of property damage due to the injection wells. I mean, we know now it is. At that time, we're still trying to figure it out. But they wanted a moratorium in their county and how much they injected. Well, problem is Mary Fallon got with, the industry and legislature, and they took the ability away from counties to put those moratoriums and said that only the governor can call moratoriums. And my point to Jason Murphy, and he loved this one, is I use the analogy of a burn ban. Counties can declare a burn ban during when the conditions are right. They don't need the governor to do that. They can do it in their county.
Okay.
But our legislature decided that they could take that authority away from the county on injection well moratoriums. So this is a battle that's always going back and forth, Oldham?
Well, you're right. My point about the cities being entities of the state is that they are not just a corporation out there like a lot of people want to tell us. They are a state government. They're part of the state government.
Well, they are franchised by the state, yes.
Yes, they're local government, but they are an entity of the state. Without this, anyway, the point is they are subject to the Constitution. Every single government official, sworn, not sworn, elected, not elected, is responsible for upholding our rights according to the Constitution and the U.S. Constitution. That is their job. That is their job. Even the park and rec guy, his job is to uphold the Constitution.
Yeah.
So the thing is that they have the duty to disobey any superior or any other branch or entity of the state or federal government when those people disobey or issue illegal orders, unconstitutional orders.
Yeah.
Biden is, full of unconstitutional orders, so Stitt naturally has to go against those things. It's his duty. Same with Bynum. If Stitt does and Bynum doesn't, then we need to oust Bynum. We need to, maybe consider indicting him, because that is lawlessness here by not being constitutional.
Well, yeah, and again, my bias is clear against Bynum. I ran against him, and mostly Dewey Bartlett Jr., but I found out they were the same person, basically. One of them's a robot. But G.T. Bynum, of course, I've got a bias with the guy, and I don't like him. He infringes. He wants to use the city to infringe in the school government. He wants to use the city to infringe in parental authority, but then he doesn't want to utilize the authority of proper governance by Kevin Stitt. He's being recalcitrant in the same way I am. So clearly
stops at Bruce Dart's desk. That's what.
That's what I said about Ted Cruz. Should not blame his children, and G.T. Bynum shouldn't blame it on Bruce Dart. If Bruce Dart is going to run our city, he should be elected like G.T. Bynum.
Yeah.
So,
sure.
I appreciate
hired by those who are.
Yeah.
Hey, Tom, I got a really fun article.
Okay.
You just are going to pop it up. You say, go look Sooner Politics right now.
Okay, let's do it.
A Harvard study, I should say. They did a study on the dialects across the United States. And you know what? They were biased as can be. They had 4 different dialects for New York. Now, obviously, there's the Bronx dialect, but they didn't even see the Minnesotan accent as being a dialect. My God, what is wrong with those people? But they said that there are 6 different dialects in or near Oklahoma. And I'd like to see people feedback on that. It's a fun article.
Accent, of course, is different than a dialect.
Well, I know they didn't use that. It's accent they're talking about. They called it dialect. However, if you don't understand their accent, you're going to think those are foreign words.
Oh yeah.
You know?
So
Yeah.
so you're saying they misused the term, they called it dialect when in reality they're talking accent?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But
Sounds
however,
lefty.
it can be so
Inaccurate.
dramatic that if you don't understand accent, you're not. I mean, look, you go down to New Orleans, you know,
Right.
and you're not going to understand them unless you really, you know, you got to
Well,
be.
they have the whole Cajun dialect. They have a
Exactly,
dialect
yes.
down there.
And there's some I didn't know, like off the islands of South Carolina, there was a very Creole society,
Right.
you know, which is
Wow.
another, you know, it's French, you know, French, you know, influence in, you know,
Right.
Minnesota, you know, which had a lot of French, but is really the Scandinavians that we're known for. You know, don't you know? Yeah. Hoofda, hoofda.
Well, and I imagine with the Indian tribes, there could be some dialect there where you get some Indian, some you know.
Yeah. And for purposes of this, they just stuck with the English language.
Okay.
Speaking, yeah.
Huh.
But and it was just continental. They didn't go to, you know, the islands or the territories or even Alaska on this. So, but
Interesting.
it's an interesting deal. So I thought, it's Monday. Let's have some fun. So take a look at it. Hey, I want to give just a quick legislative update where we're at. Last week was the deadline for bills to make it out of their originating house. So, and I didn't get into it tonight. We had Dambroso here, but there's a lot of stuff passed that just, I'm having a hard time keeping my mouth shut. And guys, I have to tell you, I'm going to make this report now. One lawmaker called me Thursday night on his way back. He said, Dave, if you're going to be state party vice chair, you can't be doing your political journalism kind of citizen journal flying off the cuff stuff. And he's right. You're going to see a difference in
You
what
start
I
being
do.
polite, that's gonna be trouble.
And yeah, and sooner politics is going to be put over in other people's hands,
Yeah.
you know,
Mm.
to handle. Well, it is right now in management. So I just needed to say this publicly.
Well,
The
that's fine.
lawmakers are right. They have a legitimate point.
Well, and you should be able to also. I mean, you're not elected yet. You don't represent them yet, and you got to do whatever you got to do. I understand that.
Yeah.
But you still are an individual who has an opinion. And so
Well, yeah.
you'll know how to treat that properly with your friends and stuff.
Yeah, and that's just it. And tonight, you didn't hear a whole lot of controversial opinion from me, especially
I don't know.
talking
That
the
bowling
senatorial
subject
race.
got pretty heated there for a second.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate what you're saying, Van, and I appreciate your trying to do the right thing by getting out there and helping support candidates and serving and campaigning yourself. We have done a lot of stuff. Don't forget Rhonda Wilmot Smith, the 29th of this month, not next week, 2 weeks from tonight. I'm going to save my GT Bynum Signs pledge to close gender gap problems for next week because I think it'll stay. I will say this just from Cassidy Mudd, KTUL staff, March 10th, 2021, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Mayor GT Bynum is working to eliminate the gender pay gap in the city of Tulsa. Friends, there cannot be, legally speaking, there is no gender gap, especially at the city of Tulsa. You cannot get hired at the city of Tulsa based on having or not having a uterus. It literally doesn't work that way. There's no, you do not fill out a form that says, and if you want to get 20% less, just be a woman. It doesn't work that way. There's legal issues that come into play. The corporations and city governments are all built in. The only way some girl might be pushed out of a job by a good old boy system is by some private ownership, sole proprietor, some sort of ridiculously small entity that has some sort of misogynistic bent Okay, but the city of Tulsa, there's no corporation that can legally discriminate against you. So the concept that G.T. Bynum can eliminate a gender pay gap is ridiculous because one doesn't exist. And he couldn't eliminate it if he could. All these things come to fruition through what is called a composite. Just like Obama's girlfriend. When they did the research, they said, oh, yeah, his girlfriend that we were talking about in his one of his autobiographies, she's not really a person. She's a composite girlfriend made up of all these different potential things. Again, this is the same way they come up with the gender pay gap. And don't forget, the gender pay gap is always balanced out by the thigh gap. So we'll talk about that next week because it's totally ridiculous, the wage gap. It's absolutely bogus and cannot happen except for by statistical data and error of composite. You will not find you can't find a woman. If capitalists are so evil, they only follow the bottom line, and women make 20% less, or they only make 80% of the man, then every place you ever went would be operated by women and women alone. The capitalists would only hire women because they'd save 20% off the bottom line of their labor force. It's totally ridiculous from a mathematical standpoint. But I'm going to save that till next week.
There you go.
I've got more. So, boys, what else before we get out of here? Anything else, gentlemen?
It for me.
All right. Well, let's see if we can take ourselves out of here, and let's do it just like this. Once again, Tommy McKay, your verbal Viking here every Monday night, and we are going to beam these guys out of here. I want to thank David Oldham for being on the show, and there he goes. David Oldham, thanks for being here. And there goes David Van, SoonerPolitics.org. Thanks for being here. There he goes. And I'm Tommy McKay, your fine host, Verbal Viking. Find me at verbalviking.com.